What you're seeing is the first real footage of Moby Dick in 20 years.
For would-be Captain Ahab's a whaleboat that pursues the infamous Moby Dick. Porpoises, an omen of good luck, lead the way. Then suddenly, she blows the white whale itself.
In the year 1959, Wakefield, Massachusetts was blessed with a brand new theme park, Pleasure Island. Pleasure Island was home to many attractions, a shooting gallery, train rides, boat rides, and most important of all, a giant animatronic replica of the famous Moby Dick. This giant animatronic would rise out of the water and spray attendants from its blowhole. Known by its many fans as the Disneyland of the Northeast, Pleasure Island would come to find out very soon why there wasn't a Disneyland in the Northeast. Turns out New England's fucking cold! And keeping a waterside amusement park open during winter was not gonna happen. So, they could only operate during the summer, which financially handicapped the park severely. In fact, it was such a detrimental handicap to the park that they closed their doors only 10 years later, in the year of 1969. So then you might be thinking to yourself, well, what happened to Moby Dick? Was he removed from the lake? Was he dismantled? And that is the question that I hope to answer today. Many people have theorized that he's still down there. Turns out that chasing down a giant animatronic whale inside of a tiny pond would be almost as difficult as finding the actual Moby Dick. Since nobody had seen him since the park closed in 1969, it led to tons of rumors for years. People saying that they went down there and saw him, people saying that they've removed him, some people claiming that there's nothing down there but a giant metal skeleton. And from all of these rumors and speculation, a local legend was born, in spite of the fact that you could just go there and see him at low water levels anyway. However, after 2005, you couldn't see him from the surface anymore, which led a lot of people to think that he had finally actually been removed from the lake or just completely collapsed into his rails. So since there's been no word on Moby Dick since 2005, I figure there's only one person who can finally put this mystery to rest. Me! And Max. So we went to Amazon and bought a $500 underwater drone. With a 1-hour battery life. We didn't know about that part. So, once the drone had arrived, we got in the car and head on up to Wakefield, Massachusetts to find the whale. There were some complications, of course. The drone was a little bit scary to use, and it had a tether that wasn't actually tethered to the ground. So, if the drone got tangled or lost or anything, we lost the drone. Our first course of action was to follow his tracks, hoping to find him on there, since that's where he'd likely be. After about a half an hour of searching, we realized why this drone was the cheapest one that was on Amazon, and we were starting to get worried that we'd never find him. However, that's when a miracle struck. You see, this drone was operated by using the touchscreen on my phone, and when a drop of water got on my thumb, it stayed there in the down position, sending it lower than I had initially intended. But that's when we found something. A giant cylindrical shape. We couldn't believe what we were seeing on the camera. We had just found Moby Dick. We were the first people to see him in over 20 years. There was some confusion on whether or not it was him though, because there were all these holes alongside of what we had found. And we had never seen any pictures of Moby Dick with those holes before. I later on found that those holes matched up perfectly with old images taken from the other side of the pond. Those holes were a later addition, made to stop Moby Dick from floating off of his tracks like he would before. Even with this knowledge that it was definitely him, I still wasn't satisfied. The footage looked terrible, the water was murky, you could barely make out what it was, and everyone that I showed it to was pretty unconvinced. So, in an attempt to get better footage, I started planning out my next excursion to the lake. I rented a GoPro, made a custom GoPro mount with my grandmother. Hey Meme, what are we doing?
We're securing the GoPro.
Yeah?
Yes.
So what do we have here?
We have a homemade 20-foot GoPro lighted holder. Now we're going to put a safety handle on our GoPro and on the other end of the pole. We don't want any accident.
I contacted my friend who is a career sailor. Well, what are we doing today?
We're finding the white beast.
We're finding the white whale.
Is Moby Dick the whale, or is Moby Dick the captain? Ahab is the
Captain Ahab. You're the fuck. You're a sailor, and you should know the story.
I never read the book.
And my other friend, who is Kyle.
This is the new one. I installed a teardown for you.
Why am I in film?
And now with our boat and captain, we were ready to find him again. And that's when we were struck by the first setback.
Yeah, just test it. God damn it, it's turned off. Wait, hold on. Wait, go back in.
The GoPro immediately disconnects the second it enters the water. Meaning that we had to just poke and prod and hope and pray that we had actually got footage of him.
What the fuck is the point?
But this was not enough to demotivate us. We got our captain, put him in the boat, and pushed him into the water. And a few minutes later, security showed up and told us to get out.
Permission to come ashore.
Permission granted, Captain.
Rendering my $25 boat and its captain completely worthless. And now we were actually pretty demotivated. We had no way to get out to the middle of the lake, so we just poked and prodded with the 20-foot GoPro arm, hoping that we'd stumble across him. It was depressing. We got no footage from this. But in our darkest hour, a ray of hope appeared from behind us. This is the owner of the Ghost of Pleasure Island Facebook group. He's incredibly knowledgeable about all things Pleasure Island and took us on a tour of the pond. Showed us where the rhino was, showed us where the dolphins were, and told us about the history of Moby Dick. But we weren't going to get anywhere by poking and prodding at the pond. So, after an information exchange, we all went home. But in spite of our lack of footage, we were still motivated to keep going and try again next time. A few weeks later, I had an idea. What if I bought another drone? This time, one with more than 1 hour of battery life. I went out and I bought this $1,600 drone with a promised 4 hours of use. It had 2. With this in hand, we were going to get that whale. So for one last time, we set out to Wakefield, Massachusetts to get the footage that we needed. So we calibrated the drone, threw it in the water, and started our hunt for Moby once more. And after about another half an hour of searching because we had forgotten where he was originally, we found him again. And we got some amazing footage. In this footage, you can see so much. You can see the shape, you can see his nose, you can see where his mouth was. You can even see that he's still white towards the bottom of the pond. We even got the shape of his eye. This hunt was incredibly successful. We have so much footage, all of which will be linked in the description. All of this has led me to a conclusion that there is still hope for Moby Dick to be rescued from this lake. While he has sunk into his tracks, he isn't in an unsalvageable state. Only a few pieces are missing, but overall he seems to be in decent condition given the circumstances. So if anyone wants to either drain the lake or get a massive crane or something to pull him out, it's certainly possible to save him. And thankfully, we found someone who might do just that. But that's a story for later. Moby Dick isn't the only mystery that pond has to offer. While we were searching for him, we accidentally stumbled upon something else. There might be more down there than we think.